It's Tuesday here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We're joined by Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. We're going to break down whether or not could this Steelers offense actually be a top 10 unit. We'll talk about that and our stars and skulls grades from the Steelers win over the Commanders. Oh, it's going to be a fun episode here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ultimate Football GM. It's the ultimate place that you got to check out because right now you can use promo code LOCKEDONNFL, all caps, to get inside the game store, receive a free boost to your franchise. Make sure to get it, and this perk will jumpstart your play and give you the advantage in creating a football dynasty. And we're joined today, as I said before, by himself, Alan Saunders. He's back in the building. Alan, man, you were in D.C. for that crazy environment where Steelers fans looked like they took over a place again. But I got to lead off this. We're going to be talking about the offense because this offense is now averaging 30.3 points per game when Russell Wilson starts. Yes, small sample size, and the Commanders are probably the first good team they played during that stretch. But they're still putting up points and putting them up in the times that they needed. And right now, as the Steelers stand today, we're recording this Monday afternoon before Monday Night Football and anything else happens there, but they are the 12th highest scoring offense in the NFL, 23.9 points per game, just behind the Chiefs, Vikings, and Packers, which means they're very close to being a top 10 offense right now, or top 10 scoring. Alan, do you think it's within this unit to get to that level?
Ooh, I think that's going to be it's hard for them for me to improve a lot, but I think they can stay where they're at. I think they are a top 10 to 15 offense. I'm not sure they can be a top 10 offense. I just think a lot would have to go right for that to happen that I'm not sure we're going to see. And I think the schedule, although like the interesting thing about the schedule is difficult for the team, but the AFC North defense is all
trash.
They stink. Now, the Chiefs have very good defense, and the Eagles have very good defense, and those are coming. And the schedule is just going to be murder. And they're going to be in some ugly games where, like, the Steelers going into Cleveland on a short week after playing Baltimore are just like, score 21 points and survive, please. Like, that's going to be the whole mindset on Thursday Night Football there, right? So, like, there's going to be a couple games that are limited in terms of offensive sort of availability, but yeah, I mean, this is where I think what was seen from Russell Wilson from this offense, the best way to say this is very sustainable. Like, I do not see some bubble that's about to burst where, like, oh, this is just a house of cards. Like, this feels like this is who they should be.
Yeah, I agree. This is what they've been trying to be for years, it feels like. They just needed a quarterback that could take the shots when they're there, let the playmakers be playmakers, and that's what Russell Wilson's doing. And right now, Alan, I'm impressed by how this offense has quickly come together, and something that I'm breaking down for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette in a film study that should be out either Tuesday morning, Tuesday early afternoon, but looking at Russell Wilson, the decisions that he's making, one thing he's really doing is he's locking in on trying to force you as a defense to commit one way. And if you commit one way, he is quickly saying, hey, I'm going the other, and I'm recognizing where you're coming from. You look at the George Pickens touchdown and you see, they got to the line early. He used a hard count, just like he did to make him jump fall offsides on the final play of the game. But on the George Pickens touchdown, he used that hard count, saw a blitz coming from the left side. He comes up, does a check, calls it out, and recognizes it. Then because it's a blitz, it's harder for them to do cover two there. So that means he just has to control the middle safety. He keeps his eyes on the middle part of the field to hold the safety there. And then as soon as he knows George Pickens is into his route, turns, fires. And yeah, the pass is a little off, but again, you trust George Pickens to go and make those types of plays. It's those type of moments that he's orchestrating that it's not the masterclass of quarterback. It's not Mahomes in his prime or Brady in his prime, but it's smart quarterback leadership in those moments that's saying, hey, I'm not the superstar here, but that guy over there, he can be a superstar if I give him the chance, and he gives them those chances, and they make those types of plays.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is the confidence in the guys to make the catch. Like he's putting it, he's giving his guys chances to make plays, and he's not putting the ball in a lot of danger to do it. Did throw the one interception in this one, but like he's giving guys chances to make plays, and he's mostly giving them safe chances to make plays. Would everyone have liked like Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson to come down with some of those earlier in that game? Sure, it would have made the win a lot easier for the Steelers. But he was giving guys chances to make plays and putting the ball where it wasn't in danger all game. And I felt like that play, the big play to Mike Williams that wins the Steelers the game, you could feel it coming all day. Like, you see how much attention that the Commanders were giving to George Pickens, how little attention they were giving to everyone else. All he needed was to just keep pushing that button, and eventually it was going to connect. He did it. I thought it was a really professional game. Arthur Smith, Russell Wilson, like the guys running the Steelers offense understood what was going on, understood that they had an advantage. They were going to have to keep after what they were doing. They were going to have to keep plowing into some tight boxes with Najee Harris. And they were going to have to keep throwing it up there to those other receivers. And eventually it was going to pay off. And they ran the ball, Jaylen Warren all the way down to the 1. And then they threw the ball. They connected with Mike Williams on the touchdown. But that offense was playing its best in the fourth quarter. I think that's a huge credit to those guys.
It is. And again, it's taking advantage of the different things they give you. I pointed this out, and I think I made a slight mistake when I just said this on the post-game show I did. The Jaylen Warren check down on 3rd and 8 that went for like 20-plus yards. I thought that happened in the first drive. That was the first drive of the second half when they were able to respond to the Commanders' score. That it set that up. It wasn't in the first drive of the game. But on that play, you saw they sent a 5-man blitz. Russell Wilson recognized it, and they basically had a delayed release for Jaylen Warren where he just snuck right out, dumped it down to him. The safety was way far back, and then he came up. By the time the safety got there, Jaylen Warren was past the first down marker and making a big play. Then on the Mike Williams touchdown again, when you look at that play, and now that I've had more all-22 chains, it's what I thought. They sent another pass rush. Russell Wilson just quickly had to identify, hey, what's the look here? And they shaped, to your point, on that final play, George Pickens on the other side of the formation. The safeties are lined up on his side of the field. And when they're doing that, now you're saying, okay, well, there's one safety in a corner on Mike Williams' side of the field. That safety on that play, all Russell Wilson had to do was say, oh, he's not playing back. He's coming up to help against Jaylen Warren. Now I can go over the top to Mike Williams. It's kind of a pick your poison. Do you want to leave Jaylen Warren uncovered for him to run loose on you underneath, or do you want to defend the deep ball to Mike Williams? And that's what Russell Wilson makes you do as a defense. He makes you have to honor each one of them, and it puts defenses in these tough decisions. That's all the Steelers have wanted from their quarterback position. He's delivering it, and I think, Alan, I think that this could be a top 10 offense because, like you said, this is a tough schedule for the Steelers because it's the division. But these are some bad defenses they're about to run up against. The Ravens have been a bad defense. The Bengals have been a bad defense. I think if they play solidly down the stretch here, the Steelers have a top 10 offense, a top 5 defense, and are a serious threat in the AFC.
Well, I certainly believe the last part of that. I mean, this feels like a game where if the Steelers beat the Ravens here and go up a game and a half in the division at this point, that's going to be huge. Like that, and the fact that if the Steelers lose this game, they'll still be right there. But if they win it, oh man, like that's really going to put the pressure on Baltimore. And while Baltimore is a very good team, they have not been super consistent this year. They've shown the ability to have a clunker or two. And while the Steelers are going through their murderer's row, the Ravens are going to have a different kind of pressure where they're going to have to beat all the teams that they're going to play, no matter, just to keep pace. And if they slip up, then this thing could be over. By that second Steelers-Ravens meeting. The Browns aren't coming back. I do think the Bengals have shown some more life. I think they will end up closer than they are right now. But, man, this is a huge game for the AFC North coming up this week.
It is. And to your point, well, the Steelers do have their robe The Ravens don't have an easy road either. They're in LA against the Chargers, who've been playing well. Then they're playing the Eagles after that. They do get the Giants and the Browns in the second after their bye week, but they play the Steelers again and the Texans. That's by my count, they have 5 real tough games coming up here for the Ravens, which to your point, I think it does kind of say, hey, they got to win this one now, because otherwise you're putting a lot on this team to win all 4 of those games down the stretch, because if the Steelers handle their business, then you're the road playoff team traveling if you're Baltimore. But we got to get into this last game here, because our Stars and Skulls grades are here. We're going to do that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, with Alan Saunders here. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I'll remind you this show is also brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Steelers fans, if you remember our great partner, Ultimate Pro Football GM, they're back and have an amazing new game mode to play. This is the game that lets you step into the shoes of a football franchise GM and lead it to glory. And now it has a new head coach career mode. So on top of getting to build your dynasty, you can, by drafting players, signing free agents, and and hiring your coaching staff, you can also call the offensive plays during the games now. And that's going to add a lot of fun for all you X's and O's gurus out there. If you've already installed the game, be sure to do an update so you can get the new features. Ultimate Pro Football GM is completely free, has no ads, 100% playable offline, play as you go, and you can play whenever you want. It's also a really fast game. You can get through an entire season in less than half an hour and keep building your team and build your team to having the ultimate dynasty. And they have a special offer for you Locked On fans. Use the promo code Locked On NFL, all capital letters, inside, and you can go inside the game store, receive a free boost to your franchise. Make sure to get it, as this perk will jumpstart your play and give you the advantage you'll want to start creating your dynasty today. To download the game, visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in your app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. We're also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel because they are America's number one sportsbook. And now we do have odds, ends, and lines on this Steelers-Ravens game. The Steelers open as 3.5-point home dogs to the Ravens this week. The Ravens' money line is set at minus 172, while the Steelers' money line is set at plus 144, and the over-under is set at 47.5 points. High-scoring affair coming between Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson. Who knows? But you can place all your bets on what's going to happen on FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. And plus, today, new customers can sign up and get a big opportunity at FanDuel, where if you place your first $5 bet and you win, you get $150 in bonus bets right away. That's $150 of free bets today to new customers if you just hit on your first bet of $5 or more, only on FanDuel.com. But just visit FanDuel.com to download America's number one sportsbook. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, let's get to the grades here. As always, stars and skulls are how we do things. You can get 1 to 3 stars or 1 to 3 skulls. 1 star is a good play and a decent day. 2 stars, great play with a good day. 3 stars, an elite performance. In reverse, 1 skull is a bad play without redemption. 2 skulls, bad game as a whole. 3 skulls, all-time terrible. So there's a balance there. So there's always a scale for how we do things here. And as always, we start with whenever they win, we start with the bad, work our way to the good. So let's start with the bad in this game. I have 1 2-skull player, Alan, and I don't think you got to work too hard to guess it. Who do you think it is?
Joey Porter Jr.
That is correct. Joey Porter Jr., in my eyes, this was a rough one for him. I did feel there was at least one of the calls I thought was really aggressive against him. I was like, okay. But at this point, Joey Porter Jr. does have to start to be very mindful. They're looking for him to be holding, even when he's not. But in this game, even without the holding calls, allowed 6 receptions on 7 targets for 131 yards. Just has to be better. There were times I thought that he matched up with Terry McLaurin and got beat. I feel like he's been good for most of this season. Alan, what was your opinion of Joey Porter Jr., and do you think there's a problem on the Steelers' hands with their top cornerback?
No, I don't think there's a problem. I think he's been a really good player all season. I'm not worried about Joey Porter Jr. at all. The penalties, which were a big problem last year when he was a rookie, have not been a big problem so far this season. And then they were this game. This is a crew that has called that tight all year. I didn't really think any of the 3 penalties were like outrageously agree. They were all pretty light calls, in my opinion. Plays that could be called, could not be called. I didn't. I'll tell you what. The thing I liked less than the penalty calls was on the long completion to Terry McLaurin down the sideline. I think he let him get in his head a little bit. Because I think he could have been a little bit more physical there to wall him off and force him out of bounds. And he kind of let up and gave him an inch. And if you're a big, strong corner, you're going to get penalties. It's part of the game. I'm not worried about him. Didn't like that play. The other one where McLaurin kind of gets lost in their zone coverage, I mean, it's not really on him. It's just a good call against that defense and a missed tackle. I think it was Minka coming across the middle. But, I honestly did not think it was that bad of a game from Joey. I understand the grade, and I probably would give it the same grade, but I don't think it's anything to be concerned about going forward.
And see, that's where I was going with. I'm glad you think that way because that's where I'm at. I don't think that Joey Porter Jr.'s rough game, because I mean, it was a rough game. He was giving up big plays, got called for penalties. I don't think that's a sign that he's in trouble. I think that he's still doing just fine. We've noted how he's played very well for most of this season. I still think he's that guy, but obviously he's still learning. I think he's still adapting. He'll get there. Let's go to our one skull grades here from the Locked On Steelers podcast. Not that many in this game. Granted, I have to let y'all know we are recording this literally like 4:45 in the afternoon on Monday. I have only had so much time to review the all 22 and go over things. So there might be some retro grades here on people that I missed. But my initial one skull grades only had 3. Dante Jackson, Minka Fitzpatrick, Van Jefferson. Dante Jackson, just because I thought that he missed some plays in coverage that he normally makes. Minka Fitzpatrick, particularly because of that missed tackle over the middle on Terry McLaurin, where Joey Porter Jr. had backed off coverage, and that missed tackle led to like a 50-plus yard gain that flipped the field and set up the scoring drive to begin the second half. I will say Minka Fitzpatrick, I've maintained this. He is not nearly as bad as people make him out to be, just because he doesn't have super playmaker, mode all the time. He was part of that tackle at the end of the game to help them win the game. But certainly that missed tackle, I thought was costly in a big way there. I also marked Van Jefferson because there was he was targeted twice, and there was one of his deep balls. If he just looks over the right shoulder, he might find it. I thought he could have done a little bit better there, but not too harsh on any of these guys.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair group. Dante Jackson had 2 penalties himself. For people who talk about Joey Porter, I mean, easily, whatever. It's just it was they called a lot, and then Calvin Austin got jammed 15 yards downfield on 1 3rd down, and they didn't call that. I thought it was a really inconsistent game from the officials. Very much so. I think the officials get skulls here more than I'm giving them to the players.
Oh,
you're looking at the way if you're giving out skulls for penalties. I thought it was a really, really poorly officiated football game both ways. I think they missed a lot, but I think probably the Steelers got the worst of it. So I'm not gonna berate guys for what I think were not great calls.
No. Listen, I'm the
Zach
first person.
got a holding penalty that I think you really like. If you put that into context with the rest of his game, maybe you could say, okay, we could give this guy a skull, except it was a completely phantom holding, and he didn't actually hold anybody, so I'm not going to hold it against him.
No, exactly. And look, that's the thing, is that there's some of them, I'm not judging Joey too harshly on those, and neither am I judging Dante too harshly. I'm not giving, some people wanted me to give Joey a bus ticket. Somebody wanted to give him 3 skulls. I'm not going to go that far when it comes to these situations. But I will say this. Well, before this, I want to say this before we jump into our next things. I did not give James Pierre a skull for his dropped pass. He would have been a skull because it would have been a play, but he had a really good coverage play late in the game in the fourth quarter when the Commanders were trying to have their comeback drive. I thought that was a makeup moment to give him a neutral grade, because without that, the Steelers might have been in trouble, and he was filling in for an injured Dante Jackson. Really solid there. But to your point, Alan, I do have a bus ticket grade, and it is indeed the NFL referees.
There you go.
Give them a bus ticket. Listen,
they
Alan,
were awful.
They were awful. And listen, it's not just about they're trying to cheat the Steelers. It was just so all over the place.
Both ways.
I was just like, man. And at one point, everyone's just like, here comes a flag. It just became predictable at some point. And it's one thing when teams are just extremely sloppy, but these were 2 good football teams, and you were trying to make them out to not be that with some of these calls. Get out of here. They need to get themselves together.
I wholeheartedly approve. I thought it was really bad both ways, like really bad.
Yeah.
The TJ Watt holding the end zone, just obvious,
obvious. And the dude staring right at it like a referee, hands on his knees, staring at it.
I've never the hold on the field goal.
Yeah.
Like I've never seen guys like Minka and TJ that mad at the officials. Like those are competitive dudes, but they generally keep it together when it comes to like barking at the officials. Those two went off in that game.
Yeah.
Minka on the field goal and TJ on the safety play, and I can't blame them. They were right.
They're right. This is an atrocious officiating there. I thought that they I won't say it wasn't both ways that bad calls were made, but I will say
I think they got fourth down wrong at the end of the game. Like
I disagree with you there.
They certainly at least should have moved the ball from this spot and remeasured it. I don't know if it was going to be. It was clearly the spot was not right. Okay, I don't know where if it would have ended up overturning the fourth down. But where they marked that ball is not where it was.
Where Gene Steratore made a very good point after the game after the play was looking at where Ertz gave himself up at, and it was because he kept coming back, and then when he settled down, it was when he got touched why they positioned the ball there. I thought that was when you show, and again, it's the slowest of replays and the smallest of things, but that's what gave that's in my opinion what made that call legit of all the other things that they did get wrong in the game.
Yeah, it was not good, though.
But anyway, either way, referees were bad in this game. Let's talk about the things that are good. We'll do that with our Stars segment here. Next on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, with Alan Saunders. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the app you can download to get live tickets to your favorite live events anywhere, but especially in Pittsburgh right now as we are getting closer and closer to winter. Events are still picking up, and if you want to get the best tickets anywhere, Game Time is the app you need to download today. You can also go to their website, gametime.co. Maybe you're a Steelers fan wanting to get a ticket for Steelers Ravens. Well, Game Time is the best place to get those tickets because Game Time is going to show you not only the best deals as far as price, but also the best seats. Game Time has the Game Time Picks feature that allows you to filter through all the bad tickets and find the great seats that are perfect just for you. Whether you want high up seats and just want to save money, or you want those club seats to feel like you're at the best experience of the game possible, go to Game Time today to be able to go get your tickets to your top events. And don't forget, you got Game Time. They give you sports events, they give you live music, they give you theater, they give you comedy shows. All different live events all across the world can be found on Game Time. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase, or go to their website, gametime.co. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's Game Time. We're back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, let's get to our stars segment here. Quite a few stars to go around in this game when you play as well as you do to find a way to win. Let's stick with the 1 stars here, simpler grades to give out here. I give a 1 star to Mike Williams. He made 1 catch in the game. It was a heck of a catch, a big one. But you know, we do it based off of, you know, how many plays you make and things like that. Mike Williams, you get a star there. Ben Skowronek for his recovered fumble on special teams. Darnell Washington, I thought he blocked well for the most part. Did give up a sack on a play, but all in all, still a good game. Deshaun Elliott, DeMonte KZ, I thought they had good games. DeMonte KZ was in on that stop on the 4th down at the end of the game. Preston Smith had a sack. TJ Watt, no real stats officially outside of a quarterback hit, but he did have pressures and he did knock down a pass. I thought he played pretty solidly. Corliss Waitman for good punting. Chris Boswell for making his extra points. Cameron Sutton was targeted a few times in this game and did really well. Jaylen Warren did have the fumble, but he also had big catch out the backfield and ran pretty well. Najee Harris had his rushing touchdown. Those are my 1-star grades here. Alan, any complaints?
I don't think so. I mean, I think this is a pretty solid list. I'm interested to see. So we did not have any offensive linemen on the Skulls, and we did not have any offensive linemen on the 1 stars.
Yes.
What do you think about the offensive line play in this game?
I thought it was really good. That's actually a huge part of what we're going to talk about soon. I have to admit there's an error on my part because Mason McCormick was supposed to be on this 1-star list. I thought he had a good game. He had a couple bad plays here and there. There are a couple missed blocks that he had, but I thought he was supposed to be on my 1-star. But the rest of the offensive line, don't worry, they're coming up.
All right.
So let's get into that because the 2 stars list, quite bastard. No, actually, I left him on the 2-star list. Okay, I meant to probably bump him down a little bit, but we'll talk about that. So on the 2 stars, I got Broderick Jones, Mason McCormick, Dan Moore from the offensive line. Defense, you got Keanu Benton, Patrick Queen. I also threw in Pat Frymuth because of his touchdown reception and other plays that he made. Alex Highsmith before his injury. Larry Ogunjobi I thought was pretty strong on the defensive front. Patrick Queen I thought was lights out in this game. If he had a big turnover to his name, he would have been a 3-star player. I also threw Russell Wilson in with the 2 stars. I felt like 50% completion rate. He played. This was a great game from him. This is that 3 stars. Not getting 3 stars is not a demerit against anything. He just threw an interception, had a 50% completion rate, and there were some plays I thought he left out there. But 2 stars, that's still a very, very good game, which is what he's been and is very, very good for the Steelers here. But Alan, your thoughts on the offensive line, because I thought when I look back at this live, I couldn't tell it. I thought that Broderick Jones was doing all right. I wasn't thinking about him too much in the game. But when I went back and looked at it, I think this was his best game of the season.
I thought Broderick Jones was the best player on the Steelers offensive line, which is probably the first time I've said that. I thought he was very good. I thought the rest of the line was sort of inconsistent, where like they were generally good, but like when you're an offensive line, like 6 straight good reps and then a really bad one is not what you want. Like because then like 5 out of, if everybody's on that same schedule, then every play somebody has a really bad rep, right? Even though like generally everybody 5 out of 6, that's good. Like, it wasn't like connecting well for some reason. I think Washington did a nice job of disguising their pass rush. I think that gave them some trouble. And I think that is one of the reasons that Russell Wilson was under a lot of pressure in this game, even though I think if you grade every individual lineman, like they don't look that bad. I thought Russ also did a really nice job of getting rid of the ball in this one too. Good shout on him for the 2-star grade. I know it was not a dominant statistical performance, but I thought he did a really nice job of keeping things moving, keeping things together. I thought Broderick Jones was really good. I thought McCormick was the second best. I thought they opened up some nice holes in the running game at times. And the rest of the time when they weren't, it was just because there were too many guys. It wasn't because the linemen were playing badly. It was because Washington was just flooding the zone with defenders. And so, I think that's how you jive, fairly good offensive line play with really not much of a running game to speak of and a lot of pressure on Russell Wilson at the same time.
No, I agree with you. I look at this and I thought the interior guys on the left side particularly did a better job in several points of this game. I think Zach Frazier continues to show why he's so needed. You couldn't get any pressure up the middle on Russell Wilson despite whatever they sent his way. But with Broderick Jones, man, I saw his punch back. We talked about that. I hadn't seen him use his hands and his arms as aggressively as we'd seen him in his best games. And to me, that's something that needed to happen. So, and we saw it back in this game. There's a chance that Broderick Jones, the simple problem that he was going through was that he was hurt and they wanted to get him experience while he was hurt. And they knew, hey, just give him some time and he'll recover as long as he doesn't sustain another big injury. And if he plays like he did in this game throughout the rest of the year, we're going to have to flip the whole analysis because there's a lot of people. In fact, there was someone that was coming, oh, he was terrible in this game. I'm like, listen, buddy, you're just saying that because you think to say that or because someone told you that. He was pretty good in this game. He's been bad. We gave him bad marks for earlier this year. But this game, this time, he was good. And if he carries that forward, Broderick Jones is going to flip the script on what people have been saying about him.
We'll also say edge is probably the weakness of that Washington defense. So it was not necessarily the biggest the toughest.
It didn't matter who he lined up against for some of the weeks.
He was doing good. Yeah, that's right. And it looked pretty good.
Absolutely.
Also, I want to shout out your defensive lineman on there. I thought that was the best game of the year for Keanu Benton.
Agreed.
I thought he really made a big impact. The Steelers played a ton of nickel, and he got in there a lot in a slightly heavier version of their nickel. I don't know what we're going to call this one. Somewhere between the regular nickel and the heavy nickel is a nickel where you still got to Landon Roberts and Keanu Benton on the field, which is pretty darn heavy. And I thought those guys, was Roberts in there too? Did he get a star?
Roberts was supposed to get a 1-star. Roberts was supposed to get a 1-star.
Yeah.
I did because
I thought they defended the run out of the nickel really, really well. And that's not really like guys like Keanu Benton's thing all the time, and I thought he did a really nice job of it.
I agreed entirely here. And my mistake for Landon Roberts is going to get a retrograde 1 star on this one. Just forgot to throw him in. We got to do the 3 stars real quick so we can get you out of here. 3 stars. I threw in Zach Frazier and Sayamalo in the game. I just, when I looked at the run game, they were moving people pretty well. I thought they were pretty coordinated. They look back on it. Cam Heyward for his 2 sacks in this game, because I thought he just continues to show anyone that doubted that man and Omar Khan's decision to re-sign him. Shame on you, because he is playing ball. He is balling out. And the 3 star that I think everyone's waiting to hear, George Pickens, the man himself. You said it during the game. That guy's an alien. He's a freak of nature. The things that he just does are just stupid. The touchdown reception was crazy. And again, his range of what he's able to catch, his ability to just snag things out of the air, it allows Russell Wilson to say, hey, you know what? I don't have to stare down George. I don't have to focus. I'm just going to put it in his general area, and he's going to go get it. And then the sideline grab where Russell Wilson do a perfect pass, but you saw him just catch it perfectly and just tap the 2 toes as he's getting pushed out of bounds. George Pickens, he keeps this up. He'll be – I talked about this with Wes Euler on Steeler Nation Radio, but I think that if he keeps this up, he'll be in that tier that's just below Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson when it comes to the best receivers in football.
Yeah. The amount of attention that Washington paid to George Pickens in this game was absurd. There were 2 people on him on almost every play. In fact, that one you're talking about going down the sideline was one of the very few there weren't. And I'm sitting there in the press box like, well, it's going to be a deep ball to George right here because they finally have him singled up. And then there it came. I thought, like, look at the slant. That's I know the touchdown is incredible. The slant is just breaks 2 tackles, breaks 2 guys' ankles, like running around like a. The best comment I saw about that is he's running like a deer on the interstate. Like nobody has any idea where he's going to go, what he's going to do, what he might be capable of. He's loose, man. He's loose. And I think what a game from George. And real quick, Cam Heyward.
He's a bad man. He's a bad man.
That team is running the ball really well. The Steelers played almost no base defense. They went light box all day long, and 97 was just like, none shall pass. It's incredible. That is one of the best games Cam Heyward has ever played, and he's 35 years old. Like, it was unbelievable.
Agreed entirely. Alan, we got to get you out of here. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people can find you, follow you, get more of your work.
At @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, and TikTok. PGH Steelers Now is the site's account. SteelersNow.com is where you can read all my written work, and you find my podcast with Zachary Smith, Steelers Afternoon Drive, on the Steelers Now YouTube page or anywhere you find podcasts.
Absolutely. He's Alan Saunders. Thank you, Alan, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Follow me, Chris Carter, on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin talks later today. Check that out. And we will be responding to it with our Wednesday episode right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.